Hi gang, and welcome to another Let's Play video on an old Games Workshop board game. And this time the prize for the most ridiculously named 80s board game goes to this absolute classic, Chainsaw Warrior. Chainsaw Warrior was released in 1987 and it's a solo play board game. In it you play as some anonymous guy, I guess, recently pulled back into service to clear a New York City block of monsters caused by a radioactive fallout or something. In fact, you can read all the backstory in this included comic book written by Mark Gascoigne and illustrated by Brett Ewins. I mean, it's not the most complex story in the world. Our anonymous ex-soldier of some sort is just, having a beer in his future house when a soldier turns up and tells him he has to report because of some favor done him by a colonel called Miller in the vague past war time. Turns out that there's such a thing as spatial warping, in which ghosts cross over to this universe, and a particularly bad spatial warp has happened in this city block where a being called the Darkness is making, bad stuff happen or something. Anyway, our hero has to do a little montage sequence of arming, finally receiving a cynical message from the president and his trusty Mark X pistol grip chainsaw before heading to hunt down the Darkness. For reasons undisclosed, he has 60 minutes to save New York. Yeah, I mean, it's silly, but it's quite a nice way to deliver it. It's a lovely little book. This one's in really nice condition. Also, on the back of this is an advert for Chainsaw Warrior t-shirts featuring this little guy buying one and then beating up bullies, and he's called Steve, so I'm going to treat this as an origin story. So Chainsaw Warrior is called Steve now, okay? Anyway, the game itself was written by Stephen Hand, who would later go on to design such classics as Fury of Dracula, and it consists of this 4-part puzzle assembly game board, decks of Room, Wandering Zombie, and equipment cards, absolutely loads of tokens, and this surprisingly dense little rulebook. But as a bit of a surprise for a Games Workshop game, one thing it doesn't feature is any models. And none are required to play, but this didn't stop Citadel Miniatures making some anyway. They're also advertised on the back of the comic book. These 3 Chainsaw Warrior models were released at the same time as the game in support and feature 3 sculpts of Steve looking a little more gaunt and worried, armed with approximations of 3 of the main weapons from the game: the rocket launcher, Reaper cannon, and Mark X pistol grip chainsaw, which on this model seems to have lost its pistol grip and has been replaced with what looks like a normal 40k chainsword. I mean, these are lovely old models, and I really like how it's the same guy, obviously the same guy across all 3, but they'd also fit in perfectly in any Imperial Guard army of the time. Anyway, lovely as they are, there's no way of actually using these guys in the game. They don't even fit on any of the spaces, so tokens it is. In Chainsaw Warrior, you generate yourself a custom character each time you play, rolling dice to generate a number of stats, and then finally a special ability. Once you've made your character, you then have a number of points to spend on equipment. You can spend different points to draw from any of the different equipment decks with certain restrictions, like you can only pick one heavy weapon, for example. Some of the equipment cards have a limited number of uses, either because of limited ammo or damage to the equipment that happens over time, and these are represented by stacked number tokens. Finally, Steve always starts with his laser lance, a really powerful weapon required to defeat the Darkness, but with only 3 uses. Once you've generated your warrior, the room deck is set up. The deck is shuffled and split in half, with the Darkness hidden in the second half of the deck, so no quick wins. And then the game begins. Steve has 60 minutes to save New York, split into 30-second turns. At the start of each turn, you move this counter along and then draw a room card, which could be an empty location, or a new find, or a trap, or a monster or something. If it's a monster, you need to fight them, first checking to see if you react in time. If you do, then you get to shoot at them with one of your ranged weapons. If you react too slow or miss with your gun, then you have to fight a round of combat against them, and if you still fail to kill them, then you have to fight more rounds of combat, each of which adds turns to the clock. If you survive a round of combat, then you can try and do a lucky shot at the end, but it might go horribly wrong. Generally, with all of the combats, you're rolling 2d6, adding your strength or hand-to-hand rating, and then adding various modifiers. If you win, you kill the monster. If they win, Steve takes some wounds. If he reaches 0, you lose the game, but some monsters also cause radiation damage or poison damage. These are tracked on the same chart as your endurance score, which can go down during the game. If the rad marker or the poison marker passes the endurance marker, then Steve dies and you lose the game. And also, if you run out of time, you lose the game. Trap cards are the other common obstacle, and they usually require you to have a specific piece of equipment to get around them or to use up some of your ammo to force your way through. Finally, if you encounter an empty space, there's a chance you might find a wandering zombie from this supplemental deck. And that's kind of all the rules. There were some additional rules and clarifications in White Dwarf 92, again written by Stephen Hand, but the basics of the game stay pretty much the same. Keep drawing cards until either you find the darkness and defeat it, or Steve dies. Once you get going, it's actually pretty fast-paced. It can be brutally repetitive, and it's not an easy game to win. But hey, there's only one way to find that out properly. Let's play it. The full game moves really fast, so this is a little more abridged than normal. I might do a full solo playthrough as a separate video so you can see it at speed, but in this game I might skip a few bits. Also, since we're new to the game, Gary is playing the city block and the monsters. Right, here we go. I start out by generating my character. I get 4d6 endurance, which gives me 16. 2d6 plus 6 wounds, which gives me 13. My hand-to-hand score is d6 plus 6. I get a 9, which is quite good. Reflexes is d6 plus 5, which gives me 7, which is quite bad. I won't be reacting very well to any new monsters. But my marksmanship is plus 2. That means I'm quite good at shooting, but just very slow at actually shooting anybody. Finally, my special skill means I can hide. Whenever I encounter a creature, I can attempt to hide from it if I roll a 6. Next, I do equipment. I roll d6 and add 2, giving me 6 points of weapons. I choose a heavy weapon, which is a rocket launcher with 4 rockets, one hand-to-hand weapon, and I'm lucky enough to draw the Mark 10 pistol grip chainsaw. I pick some clothing, that's a rad fiber jumpsuit, which will do -1 to rad damage for me, and finally a device which turns out to be a wire cutter, and we're ready to start. So we had 30 seconds to the clock, and the first room appears, and it's a trap, a chain link fence, but hey, I've got wire cutters, that's good, immediately useful. We advance the numbers and move along. The next room is a strength 10 zombie. All right, combat. So first I try to hide as per my special skill, but I fail. I don't want to shoot it with a rocket, so I'll chainsaw it. We both roll 2d6 and I add my hand-to-hand score plus 3 for the chainsaw, and Gary adds his zombie strength. I win, so the zombie's dead. Easy. Next room. The balcony turns out to be clear with no wandering zombies, but the next room has a mutant thing, which gives me a point of radiation damage before I start. I fail to hide. Again, I don't have a gun and I want to save my rocket, so no reaction roll and on to combat. I roll higher and chainsaw it. The next room is a dump. Lovely, which gives me a clothing card or a spare ammo clip. I'm not sure I can take spare ammo clips for a rocket launcher, so I take the clothing card and get some body armor with 6 uses. This body armor gives me a 5-up save against wounds I suffer. The next room's empty, but a strength 9 wandering zombie shows up. I fail to hide again, but I manage to chainsaw it up again. Next is another trap, a chasm, but this is a bad one. This route is blocked. Discard this card from the game and retrace my steps to escape the building. Okay, escaping the building. You roll 2 dice and I get a 5. That means I have to do 5 cards to get out and then start again at a new entrance. Here goes. First, it's a trap, a rad canister. I take d6 plus 3 rad damage, giving me 9. Next is a dump, giving me an automatic rifle with 12 uses. Next, it's a strength 7 zombie. I fail to hide. I fail my reflexes roll to use my gun, but I chainsaw him apart anyway. I then get to an empty room with a wandering zombie. I don't hide. I shoot with my rifle but fail to hit him, and then I kill him with my chainsaw, and with that, I'm out of the building. Now I'm out, I have to roll 1 dice and add that many minutes to the timer as Steve goes looking for another entrance. I get a couple more bits of equipment at this point, a rope and launcher to bypass chasms as it turns out. Damn. And a helmet, which means I can't get venomed by zombies trying to bite me, which is nice. Finally, the chasm card is completely discarded from the game. I shuffle all the rooms I've already drawn back and I have to start again. Here goes. I enter on a balcony and I find a zombie, which I hide from. Next room is another zombie, which I shoot but miss and then kill it with my chainsaw. Next, it's a great big strength 11 zombie, which I hide from. Next room. Clear. Next room. I come across a pack of rats, which I attack with my chainsaw and scare them all off. Next room, thankfully, is a first aid kit. That'll be handy at some point. Next room is another zombie, which I hide from. Next room is a chaos agent, and he surprises me and goes straight into hand-to-hand combat, where I cut him apart with my chainsaw. This chainsaw turns out to be really, really good. Next room, though, is a trap, and this time it's a lunatic. Yep, just a rogue lunatic who steals some equipment and randomly gets my bloody chainsaw. It is removed from the game. Right. Okay, next room is a zombie. I managed to react and shoot him, but the rifle is rubbish and I miss. I only have a hand-to-hand of 9 now, but I managed to punch the zombie to death, so that's not too bad. I go through a few empty rooms and traps after this before I find another mutant thing, which deals me 4 rad damage. The rad counter's getting pretty scary now. My terrible rifle does nothing, and neither does my punchy fists, so I'm finally wounded. I take 1 wound, but thankfully my body armor blocks it, and that's 1 use down for the body armor. So we lose another 30 seconds, and we fight again. I lose again with just my fists, and my armor doesn't stop it. So this time I actually take 1 wound, which means I have to roll on the extra wounds table. I roll an 8, which means I lose my balance. I'll have -1 hand-to-hand next round, and whereas I'd usually be able to take a lucky shot here, I've lost my balance, so I can't do it. Another 30 seconds goes on the clock, and I do another round of combat. I lose again, body armor saves it this time. I get to take my lucky shot, but I fail and just take another wound. Next round, I lose again. This is 1 tough mutant, and my fists aren't doing anything. I save the wound with the body armor, try for a lucky shot, and manage to shoot myself, so that's not good, taking 6 wounds. The armor saves none of them. Okay, we finally crossed the 20-minute mark of this game, and I punch the mutant to death. I then use my first aid kit to heal some of those wounds. On with the mission. Next card is a weapons dump. I find some steel gloves, which gives me a much needed +1 in hand-to-hand. I then zoom through a series of really fast rooms, punching zombies until I come to this chaos agent who I miss with my gun and then attacks me with his venom-coated knives. I'm wounded, and the extra wound gives me -3 hand-to-hand next turn and no lucky shot. Next round I fight again and predictably lose again, getting the exact same result. Another wound down. The next round I lose again, but this time I don't take the extra wound. So on the final round I lose again, but my body armor absorbs it, and I try for a lucky shot and finally kill it. Next up, another empty room. Next up, another chaos agent who I shoot with a bloody rocket this time, just to make sure I kill him, and because I haven't used any yet. He is blown up. But next up is another chaos agent, this time accompanied by 2 wandering zombies. I fail to hide, shoot 1 zombie with my assault rifle, and have to fight the other 2, but thankfully they go down easily to my big punchy steel gloves. Next up, I find a trap which turns off my electronic items, but I think the only one I've got is my laser lance for 6 minutes. And then I come across another trap, another rad canister, which pushes my rad above my endurance, and there we are. After being forced to double back, Steve succumbed to radiation before even getting halfway through the first deck. I think that's how most games of this go. But as you can see, as a game, it's weirdly enjoyable. The fact that you start with different stats and equipment each time makes it pretty replayable, and once you get into the swing of combat, it feels really fast-paced. The combat is simple enough that you really can do a lot of the rooms in less than 30 seconds. I'm not sure if a complete game could actually be done in an hour though. The things that really slowed us down were setup or managing tokens when you get new equipment. Anyway, it's a really nice little solo play game which really does feel like you're playing against the city block or against the game, and makes me want to play it again to see if I'd do any better, which I think is everything you want from this. Finally, it's worth mentioning that Auroch Digital did translate this game into a desktop and mobile app in 2013. Unfortunately, it's no longer available for sale. However, I got the desktop version on Steam in a bundle of Games Workshop games, which I think probably a lot of other people have got too, and it's a really faithful adaptation, which certainly saves on all that token setup. As for the 3 Steves, well, there's not much work for them to do here, but I'm glad I got them and painted them, and I think they might end up making an appearance in, I don't know, some sort of inquisitorial warband in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, there are more Let's Plays of this sort of old Games Workshop game on my channel, as well as all sorts of other content about the Warhammer universe. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's a Patreon link below. See you next time.